All right, hey everybody, this is Rosh, and you're watching Helix Basics. This is a YouTube tutorial series that I'm putting together to help new and experienced users program their Line 6 Helix. So a little about myself. Once again, my name is Rosh, and I build and program a lot of guitar rigs out here in the LA area. Some of my clients include Steve Vai, Leppard, Melissa Etheridge, Perfect Circle, Dweezil Zappa, Kylie Minogue, and more. So I wanted to get back to the Helix community and show some tips and tricks on how to program all their Helix products, and in this case, this is the Helix Floor. So if you've been watching this YouTube channel, there's plenty of fractal audio content. And a thing that a lot of people don't know about me is that I program all the modelers out there on the market, including the Kemper, the Quad Cortex, all the fractal products like the FM3, the XFX3, and the FM9. And in this case, the Line 6 Helix Floor. So there's a lot of best practices that you can do across any type of modeler. And so I wanted to show some tips and tricks on how to do that with the Helix. To get the best tone on the stage, in the studio, at rehearsal, or at home. And so we're going to, in this case, for this video, we're going to be building a basic crunch / edge of breakup kind of sound. This is going to be kind of somewhere in between a full rock rhythm sound and a clean sound. Obviously, this is going to be slightly different for most users, but for me, when I think of this kind of sound, this is something I would use on maybe like, if I was playing a cover gig, it would be like a bluesy sound, or maybe something like a Tom Petty kind of sound. And I find this is useful for when you don't want to go full rock, but it's not going to be perfectly clean. So right here, we're on a factory preset. This is the US double norm. What we're going to do is we're going to build this from scratch on the front panel. And I'm going to do this, tutorial again, but this time using HX Edit to, basically do the same thing. But a lot of users want to do everything on the front panel, which I totally understand. So here's how we're going to do it. So the first thing is we want to navigate to any of our user preset slots. So what we're going to do is press the preset button right there. And you can see in the user set list from 3 to 7, these are going to be a bunch of set lists that have blank presets that you can fill with your own sound. So we're going to use the joystick and navigate over to the user. And you can, of course, rotate the knob as well as using the joystick going up and down. We're going to select user set list number 1. And as you can see, I already have a preset in a user slot 01A. So we're going to navigate and use 01B. And again, I'm rotating the knob. You can, of course, use the joystick to select up and down as you wish. And then I'm going to press in on the joystick. As you can see, it is completely blank. And there's going to be a very useless kind of direct guitar sound, not very inspiring to play. So I'm going to navigate to the center of the preset, and I want to basically put an amp and a cab there. So the first thing that we're going to do is press down on the joystick, and we're going to be listed with all the blocks that we can add to our preset. Let's navigate down. And again, I'm using the down arrow. You can, of course, rotate if you wish. And Line 6 gives you the option to use amp, preamp, and cab separately, so you can pair an amplifier with a completely different cabinet that you wouldn't be able to do in the real world. Or you can, of course, go to amp+cab, and then Line 6 basically selects a cabinet that is going to generally go with that amplifier. So the cool thing is, in the real world, you couldn't plug a 100-watt Marshall into like a 1x12 cab, but in the modeling world, you can. So, but in this case, let's just stick with something simple. We're going to go to the amp+cab block. And then I'm pressing down, and you're going to be presented with this next column. And again, we have guitar, bass, guitar legacy, and bass legacy. The legacy options right there are for the older, previous versions of all the Line 6 products, and you can select a guitar amp from there. But in this case, we're going to use the Helix one. So let's select the guitar. And as you go through these from the top to bottom, it's going to be basically like the wattage of the amps, and the gain of the amps is going to get higher and higher. So we're going to start with maybe the smaller wattage amps towards the top of the column. And then as you navigate down, you can see that it's going to start going through some of the more higher gain amps as you get into the Brit territory, and then the German and the Cali, which are all the Mesa Boogies. These are going to be, the higher gain amps. But in our case, what we're going to be doing is going to be basically building a kind of edge of breakup, slightly crunchy sound, something in between clean and full-on dirty. And I find that most of the amps that do the job for that are the Essex amps, which are based off the Vox AC30 style amps, and then the Matchstick amps, which are basically the Matchless DC30, which is more or less a Vox clone, but again, with a slightly different flavor. And you have all these options here. So let's select the Essex A30. This is kind of like the starting point for an amp like this. Most people are going to be familiar with this type of amp. It's an AC30 style amp, and we're going to be pressing down on the joystick once it's selected. You can use the joystick to navigate up and down, or rotate the knob and select which one you want. So let's select the A30, and you're going to see right here, you're going to be presented with all the the types of knobs that are going to be present on the amp. Now, the one thing I want to hip everybody to is these page right and left numbers. As you select any effect block, you get to go into deeper parameters for each block. So you can see that there's this little line right above the effect that is going to tell you which page it is. So for example, the amp+cab block, you have 4 pages to select. So a lot of people think these are the only knobs that you have, but the key is going to really be some of these other deeper pages in there. So the first thing that I always like to do is make sure that the cabinet is going to have like a set of low and high cuts that are going to make the amp sound good. By default, there's a low cut and a high cut of 90 hertz and a high cut of 5K, which is actually a really good starting point. I usually recommend everybody starts at 80, and then the high cut can go all the way to 8,000 or 8.0. Somewhere between 5 and 8 for the high cut, and 80 to 100 is usually a good starting point. Now, as you can see, it has defaulted to select the silver bell cabinet, which is basically like, the silver speakers. And you can also select the microphone. Selecting or rotating this knob allows you to select different speakers, as you can see. And each speaker has a different flavor. So for example, if we start with, let's say, the 1x12 blue bell, so this would be almost like the AC15 cabinet. And you can hear that each cabinet really affects the sound. So again, the default was the silver bell with this. And then all the microphones also change the sound of the cabinet. So as I rotate through each microphone, so you can see each microphone also gives it its own different flavor. So these can be a lot of different options for people. So let's default back to the 67 condenser that this picked. And let's talk about the position and the distance. So the position and the distance are going to be where you move the virtual microphone in space. So the position is basically how far away from the center all the way to the outside of the speaker, rather than, so the way you want to think about this is, as you go towards the center, the tone is going to get brighter. And then as you move away from the center, the tone gets darker. So you can definitely hear that. So that can be a really useful tone shaping tool. Again, general best practices is a lot of, when you mic an amp, it's usually going to be somewhere at the cap edge. This is, if you look at the speaker, the dust cap is that nice circle in the center of the speaker. And then right where that meets the rest of the paper on the speaker, that is usually referred to as the cap edge. Most people will end up using this as a starting point for when they mic a speaker. And if it's too bright if it's too bright, then they start moving it away from the center. If they need to brighten it up, then they start moving it towards the center. So this is actually a good starting point. Now the distance is going to determine the distance that the microphone is away from the grill cloth. And again, the further away you go, the less bass there's going to be. And as you move closer to the speaker with the distance, you're going to notice more bass. This is the proximity effect. So again, I'm speaking into a lav mic, but if I move the microphone closer to my mouth, you're going to hear there's more of like a pickup of low end. So all microphones kind of have this effect, which is the proximity effect, and this can also determine how much low or high end you want in your guitar. So here it is all the way up against a speaker. And then as I move it away, so you can hear that it really affects the bass, but also changes the tone as you move away from the speaker. So let's start with kind of maybe the default, which was 1.25, right around here. All right, so now that we've dialed in the cabinet block, I always start here in the cabinet before I start changing where I want the rest of the tone to be. So now, obviously, this is a lot more gain than I would want, so we're going to just bring the drive down here. And then I think it needs to be a little bit brighter, cut the bass a little bit. And then The cut knob on most of these AC style amps is almost like a reverse presence. So the higher you bring the cut up, the more it shaves off the top end. And as you bring the cut knob down, it's going to bring more of the high end back in. And again, that's at like super upper frequency. So let's do somewhere around maybe 5. And again, I'm playing a Les Paul. This is the bridge pickup if I play on the neck pickup. Yeah. And again, cool thing is this is going to really respond to the volume knob. So I'm playing on the bridge pickup. I'm going to roll the volume knob a little bit up and down. You can also pick really lightly and it stays clean. But if I dig in, it's going to start crunching up a little bit. And the cool thing is you have a lot of flexibility to add overdrive pedals to kind of like shape the tone as you wish. Now, the channel volume is basically just going to determine how loud the amp is within the preset. So you can, of course, bring this up or down if you need more. We'll leave it at maybe 9. And again, responds really well to the volume knob. And again, I'm on the neck pickup, rolled off to about maybe 8. Obviously, this is a super dry sound. We want some reverb in there. So let's add a reverb really quickly. I'm going to, of course, just navigate down to the reverb. Let's put a mono. Let's put a hall in there. And again, selecting this will allow you to adjust any of the parameters for this reverb. I don't need that much reverb in there. Maybe 1 second is plenty. Yeah, so we're on there, and I'm going to bring the mix down. Yeah, pretty good. And again, in future videos, I'll cover some of the other parameters. But again, there's a quick, edge of breakup kind of tone. Yeah, that's pretty good. So something like that can be really useful. Of course, there are other ways to shape the tone, especially in the cabinet block. In my opinion, the cabinet block is going to be the key to shaping a lot of guitar tones. The proper mic choice paired with the proper cabinet, it really gets your tone going. As I hear this tone now, I definitely want a little bit closer to the grill cloth just to add a little bit more low end. And I'm going to bring the low cut down just a hair to maybe about 80 hertz. Now, if you're wondering about the microphones, the condenser microphones generally capture, a full spectrum. They're kind of more of a, like, let's capture the top, the bottom, and the mid-range, as opposed to dynamic microphones, which capture mostly the mid-range. So if I keep these settings exactly the same and, for example, go to the 57, this is a dynamic mic, very common, it's the most ubiquitous mic, you're going to notice that there's way more mid-range and a lot less top and bottom. And it really has that kind of punchy effect where it's going to cut through the mix a lot more. The ribbon mics are generally going to be darker. They capture the bottom and the top end, but it's going to be a really smooth, dark top end. So these are really dark microphones. And as you can hear, it's going to get a lot darker and have a lot more low end. I'm still on the bridge pickup, so you can hear the difference between the ribbon and the dynamic. I didn't adjust my guitar at all, but you can hear that this is really dark. And in the condensers, of course, give you kind of that full frequency spectrum. Kind of a little bit of the top, a little bit of the mid-range, and a little bit of the low end. And again, these are just kind of like the default settings at Line 6 paired with this particular cabinet. I feel like that sounds pretty good as a starting point for a good edge of breakup tone. And again, you can add some effects here. But for the time being, I think this is a good place to wrap it up. Again, this is just dialing in a really simple AC30 edge of breakup kind of tone. You can hear it responds well to all my pickups. If you dig in, it gets a little crunchier. And it responds to the volume knob really well. And of course, you can always boost this with pedals. So that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching. And if you guys need any one-on-one help dialing in any of your Line 6 products, by all means, feel free to reach out to me directly and we can talk soon. Thanks.
I'm falling with you. I'm standing with you.